Hello, hello, hello. Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Beauty in Us Radio right here on Awesome God Radio. I am your host, Nelson E. Brown, and I would like to thank you all again for tuning in for another show. I'm happy that you all took some time out of your evening to be with us this evening, and I'm glad that you all were able to stick around. It's May 24th, 2022, so this is another edition of the show. I'm happy to return from last week. Last week, I had a chance to celebrate um, with another Maryland State Delegate Stephanie Smith. It was her birthday last week, and she was also celebrating her reelection campaign for her seat in the Maryland General Assembly within the House of Delegates. So I had a chance to spend time with her and her colleagues last week, I had a chance to celebrate her birthday and her reelection campaign. And I encourage you all to really, really support her. Delegate Smith has been a guest on my broadcast before. She's spoken about the Crown Act and a couple of other pieces of legislation that she helped sponsor. But again, I had a good time last week, last Tuesday evening, just in case you all are new, or if you're tuning in for the first time in a couple of weeks, that's where I was last week. So I played a previous broadcast and ran a recent show from the past, and I had a chance to again speak with Delegate Smith and her colleagues last week as we celebrated her reelection campaign for her seat and for her birthday. So again, I encourage you all to really, really take time out to support Delegate Smith and all of her endeavors. I had a chance to celebrate her reelection campaign with her colleagues and a couple of other people in my network last week while I was out for the show. But I'm glad to be back here this week to be a guest on another show to introduce the guest. Delegate. She's a Maryland State delegate and candidate for Comptroller for Maryland State Comptroller. Her name is Brooke Lierman. She represents District 46 and the Maryland House of Delegates within the Maryland General Assembly, and she's going to be with us this evening to talk about her campaign for Comptroller, the State Comptroller for Maryland, and about her work in the House within the Maryland General Assembly. Now, we were supposed to schedule her show back in February, but we had to make some adjustments. But I was able to again book her for another show and for another broadcast this evening, so that she could have an opportunity to speak about her campaign and to speak about the work that she has done in the House and even as an attorney for the state of Maryland, representing the state of Maryland, and what she does outside the House and outside the Maryland General Assembly that helps her provide that public service that we are all looking for from our elected officials. So before I begin, I want to read a little bit about her, just in case you all are not familiar with Miss Brooke Lierman. According to her bio, Ms. Learman is a civil rights and disability rights attorney, and she's also a state delegate, as I stated before. She represents the 46th Legislative District, and she's also a Democratic candidate for the Maryland's next state comptroller. And she served for 5 years as a member of the Appropriations Committee before assuming a leadership role on the Environment and Transportation Committee in 2019. She also serves as the House Chair for the Joint Committee on Pensions, sits on the Joint Committee on Ending Homelessness, and founded and formally co-chaired the Maryland Transit Caucus. She's an energetic and effective advocate for her constituents and for families and small businesses, writing landmark legislation that invests in public transit, funds reading supports for our public school students, closed loopholes in paid family leave laws, creates, prevents sources of income discrimination in housing, promotes evidence based gun violence interruption programs, and the first in the nation's styrofoam ban. And she is running for state comptroller to ensure that the comptroller's office is leading efforts to lift up every family, community, and small business in Maryland and increase financial resilience and prosperity. So again, that was a little bit of a bio from Miss Learman. She's again a civil rights and disability rights attorney outside of her work in the Maryland House of Delegates and within the Maryland General Assembly, and she's also a candidate for state comptroller. So again, we're going to be speaking about some of the work that she is going to be doing as um, not only a state comptroller, but again, we're going to be speaking about her work in the House as a member of the House of Delegates and within the Maryland General Assembly. I'm not sure if you all are really aware of what's going on, in your community. But again, I established this platform so that I could give public servants, community organizers, and activists an opportunity to voice their concerns about issues that matter. And I also give them an opportunity to share their stories, because let's be honest, there's a story behind everything that we do. And there's a story behind all of what we set out to accomplish in our lives. And when we talk about public service and when we speak about the needs of the community and the needs of the people that we serve, we have to think about it from their perspective. And again, I think that it's important for everyone to realize how important it is to stay informed and to stay educated and to really do their research in terms of who they choose to vote for in these elections. And again, if you want to learn more about Ms. Lierman's campaign for Comptroller, you can head on over to www.brookelierman.com. So Brooke is spelled Brooke, and Lierman is spelled Lierman.com. And again, that'll give you more information about her campaign for state comptroller and the work that she's done as a delegate and as an attorney. But I'm going to piggyback a little bit and talk a little bit about why she's running for comptroller. I had a chance to speak with Ms. Lierman prior to this evening about her campaign and about her all of the work that she's done in order to get to this point. And she says that she's running for comptroller to help Maryland's rise to this moment. And she claimed that as an elected chief financial officer for the state of Maryland, she always talked about how the comptroller must be a leader who embraces creative ideas, and a comptroller is supposed to have the courage to put those ideas into action. And from big ideas on wealth building policies to the little details that make it easier for families and businesses to pay taxes and access state programs and benefits, she definitely did her homework and she definitely did her research as it pertains to that. And she is going to be speaking about that a little bit more in detail again. But again, we have to think about what the work of the comptroller for the state of Maryland consists of. But she says that as your comptroller, she's planning on, her plan is to modernize the way Maryland does business and to ensure that we all are working. Well, by they, I should say, the elected officials are working on our behalf in the most effective way that they can. And so that means that they're going to do their best to invest in the infrastructure and make sure that everyone, from small business owners to students and even to the seniors, the people who identify as members of our aging population, her goal is to make sure that they have access to broadband internet, which has been a huge issue for the city of Baltimore, especially throughout the course of the pandemic. But since she's here in the waiting room now, since she just hopped on, I'm going to give Ms. Lierman an opportunity to introduce herself to the listeners. Ms. Lierman, thanks again for agreeing to hop on for my show. I know we had a mishap last time, but I gave a little bit of introduction into the work that you do. I remember our conversation a few months ago about your campaign and about the work that you do for the House and also what you plan on doing for your campaign. So without further ado, I wanted to jump right into it. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to run for comptroller for the state of Maryland?
Sure. It's so great to be here. Thank you so much, Nelson, for all your great work. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. And I just want to make sure I'm in the right space. So I am thrilled to be running to be the next comptroller. There is a really incredible opportunity that we have now to make sure that we are ensuring that the resources of the office really reach communities and families and small businesses all over the state. I am a mom, I'm a civil rights and disability rights attorney and a leader in the House of Delegates. And I've been able to lead on public education, public school funding, more equitable funding for our schools, community-based gun violence prevention programming, on environmental issues, and on transparency and more. And so I know and I understand that the comptroller's office is really uniquely situated to focus on the income-based issues and the economic challenges that we have as a state right now. And so really thrilled to be bringing a bold new vision to that office for how it can work with families and communities around the state.
Yes, absolutely. And again, thanks again for again agreeing to appear on the show to talk about that a little bit. I did have a few questions that I wanted to ask you about your campaign and about the work that you do. So I know that when we talked the last time, you talked about your work as an attorney, because you wear several hats. So you're an attorney, but you're also a member of the House of Delegates. So could you tell us a little bit about the work that you do as an attorney and how that kind of plays a role into everything else, in terms of how you've been able to create that balance between your working life in the House and your working life in the law office? Could you tell us a little bit about what inspired you in order to become an attorney and to venture into these different arenas?
Yes, absolutely. So, when I graduated from college, or when I was in college, I helped work with a group I helped work with some of my friends in college to start a mentoring program that we called the Dream Program. And we worked with kids who lived in a public housing development not far from our college. And I really saw the huge inequities in our system, between what they were experiencing, what I was experiencing, the lack of opportunity. Truly saw that talent is universal, but opportunity is not. And really loved being an advocate for those kids, and decided at the end of the day that I wanted to be an advocate all the time. And so decided to go to law school to become a professional advocate, and made my way to Baltimore, where I have had the honor of representing people who need an advocate, people who have voices but who are not being heard, right? I've represented a wrongfully convicted man who served 21 years in jail for a crime he didn't commit. I've represented low-wage workers who aren't being paid what they're owed, including the workers at the ESPN zone when it was shuttered. I've represented people with disabilities all over the country, who just want a chance to reach their full potential. And I love doing this work. But I also saw huge inequities in my new adopted hometown of Baltimore City. And so I decided that I wanted to get involved locally as well. I joined my community association. I started speaking out about the need for better transit. I had tried to take the bus, was really frustrated by how unreliable it was. So then I started working on the Red Line, which was the light rail line that was proposed in Baltimore. So I was on a committee to help support the Red Line. I started doing more pro bono work, working with communities and community associations around the city, to make their neighborhoods safer. So I love doing this work, and saw that, in my opinion, there was so much more that needed to be done for schools, on transit, and the environment. So decided I wanted to throw my hat in the ring and run for state delegate. So I knocked on 14,000 doors, held dozens of meet and greets, and won. And so for the past 8 years, I've had the honor of serving as one of the delegates for District 46 in Baltimore City. And being an attorney, I've never stopped being an attorney. So still an attorney, and I'm still, and also a delegate and a mom, and mom of two, 9 and 4-year-olds. But I loved being an attorney, and have continued to practice law while being a delegate. It's two different parts of my brain. But I think it's, for me, I've learned so much about how laws, when we pass them, work or don't work, right? And we need to make sure that we're passing laws that can actually positively impact people's lives. And so have, done my best to make sure that we're doing that.
Yes, and thanks again for providing a really great answer to my question. My next question was, which neighborhoods do you represent in District 46? Because last week I had an opportunity and a privilege and honor to attend an event with Delegate Stephanie Smith. She was celebrating her reelection campaign.
She's great.
Yes, and she's also an attorney, and I had her on my show. It's been about a year and a half since she's been on my show, and I've learned about her communities that she represents, and I know that each district has certain needs, and each district again has a diverse population that's filled with constituents who voice concerns about a wide variety of issues. Could you tell me a little bit about which neighborhoods you represent and what your districts have been looking for, from not just the House, but also from their comptroller and people who they elect? So, because I know that each district has different needs. So, could you tell us a little about the neighborhoods that you represent?
Absolutely. So I represent District 46. District 46 is all of the neighborhoods around the water in Baltimore City. So it's an incredibly diverse district. I live in Fells Point. I represent 3 certified Main Street districts. I represent all of downtown Baltimore. I represent the Port of Baltimore, several port areas. I represent 8 public housing developments, the Ritz-Carlton, and all of the Latino communities in the city. So an incredibly diverse district. But I love it. And every community, really just wants to be a place where families can thrive, small businesses can grow, and people can grow old and live great lives. And so, my job is to make sure that they all know when there are challenges, they can reach out to me. I am really proud of the fact that so many of my constituents do reach out to me first because they know I'll show up and they know I'll be there to help get things done and to help solve problems. We work to both find answers to short-term challenges and then also think through long-term challenges and how we can implement and pass legislation to help build newer schools, to help do community development. I helped start a community development corporation in Brooklyn and Curtis Bay, because these were 2 neighborhoods that were really being left behind but didn't have a CDC like Cherry Hill or the Southeast or other areas did. So, wanting to make sure that the infrastructure is there to do the work that needs to be done. But I've loved being a partner to my communities as well as an advocate, and a problem solver. One quick example is during the pandemic, several community groups came and said, look, we just need more access to food. There's not enough food. And then restaurants, of course, were really hurting as well, because many had to shutter their doors, or most or all had to close, and we're just doing takeout. So I reached out to World Central Kitchen, the nonprofit run by Jose Andre, and asked, hey, could you come to Baltimore? And they said, well, we're interested in learning more. So I talked to them about the food infrastructure, the city, the schools, what was going on, and they agreed to come. And they adopted 11 schools in Baltimore and served thousands of meals every week for 6 months at 11 schools. And we also connected them to restaurants around the city of Baltimore that were owned by people of color, women, immigrants, to help pay those restaurants to make food. And then those restaurants would give that food to nonprofit organizations like Casa de Maryland or the Greater Baybrook Alliance or others. And then that food would be given out for free to families in need. So really creating a whole new infrastructure of supporting restaurants and jobs while also getting food to people who needed it. So it's that kind of, I love to be resourceful, love to be responsive, and love to be proactive in helping to work with communities.
Yes, and that's definitely. I'm glad that you brought that up because I know that many of the low-income neighborhoods have definitely been affected by the pandemic. I know that throughout the 2 years has been a challenge for a lot of constituents who have families and who've lost jobs and who've lost loved ones. So it's great to hear that people like you are out there, helping them, in terms of providing them with some of their basic needs that should be met. And I definitely understand that a lot of the low income communities have definitely suffered throughout the course of the pandemic. And again, that's great work that you do on a daily basis because a lot of people again a lot of the constituents, they want their elected officials to be out there with them, helping them throughout the process, and it's great that you do that. So what's been the most difficult part of your job as an attorney and as a member of the House of Delegates, and what has been the most difficult, well, what has been the most challenging part about doing that work throughout the course of the pandemic? Because I know that you had to demonstrate tons of flexibility and you had to definitely jump through a lot of hurdles throughout the course of the pandemic. So what has that looked like for you?
Oh, the pandemic, what does it look like? I mean, it has been, one thing after another, but really, I feel like I've loved and had the honor of working with small businesses to help save their businesses, of working with communities to help make sure people are getting food, that they're not getting evicted. We've worked with thousands of people to help get them unemployment, because our unemployment system in Maryland was so broken during the pandemic. Unfortunately, the Hogan administration, brought in a contractor who could not do the job. And, the pandemic, when it first hit, it was immediately, what can we do to get people food? Reaching out to World Central Kitchen. What can we do to make sure people aren't being evicted, and that they have money, right, to live off of? And a lot of it was also just bringing information to people. So I did what you're doing throughout the pandemic. Twice a week, I did public Zoom, Facebook Lives, where I would bring on experts and answer questions. We brought on child psychologists to talk to parents about how to deal and respond and talk with their kids. We brought on housing attorneys to talk with people about how to deal with housing challenges. We brought on people who are supporting arts institutions and said, hey, if you're an arts institution, we want to make sure you don't close down. Here are resources that you can take advantage of. So we really just I tried to bring resources and answers to people. We did one with the Secretary of Commerce to talk about, and BDC to talk about options for small businesses. So really during the pandemic, I tried to make sure I was both an advocate for my communities, making sure that they were getting what they needed, and that I was a resource, that I was providing information for people. Because all of us, in those early days especially, we were just desperate for information to understand what was happening and how things were going. I still remember my very first Zoom, which seems incredible since we're on Zoom all the time now. So yes, I've been, try to be a resource, an advocate, and a partner.
Yes, absolutely, and it's great, to know that again. The work that you do is definitely should be acknowledged. I mean, it's remarkable to know that people like you, elected officials like yourself, are actually out there with the constituents, and you have these forums, because a lot of people automatically think that because their elected officials aren't there 24/7, that their voices are not heard or that they're not recognized. But it's important to have those forums so that people can ask those questions and people can definitely voice their concerns about issues within their community. And a lot of people don't realize that as constituents, they have the power. Everybody is working on their behalf. Everyone is working for them to make sure that they are able to raise their families so that they can have a roof over their head, and so that they can have food on the table. So again, it's important, and I'm glad that you mentioned it again, that you had those forums to talk about many of the issues that are plaguing the community. And that's really, really nice, because a lot of people, again, they don't demonstrate that flexibility like you do, in order to make that happen, so that people can come and sit down and ask questions when they need to. So my next question is, what's the most rewarding part of your job as an attorney and as a state delegate for Maryland? So I know that, when you're in the beginning of the year, when you're in session, I know it's a really, really hectic period for all of you guys, because again, you're trying to do as much as you can for that legislative session, and I know that it can be very, very challenging, trying to, again, pass bills in a bipartisan manner, without you're trying to do what's best for the community, but I realize that there are a lot of obstacles in your way. So what does that legislative session look like in the beginning of the year, and what does it look like even when the session's over, and when you're doing your work, when you're wearing the attorney's hat, and when you're actually in the position where you have to again play all these roles?
Great questions. Lots of questions there. So, I think it's just a matter of, so right now I'm running to be the next comptroller. So really excited about that and the work that we can do in the comptroller's office. This is the first time since 1998 that there's been an open seat for state comptroller. And I'm excited to take, my work, my leadership from the House on public schools, gun violence, reproductive rights, and more to the comptroller's office to really be the people's advocate. But also, as an attorney, I've learned so much, right, about how to work with people, how to make sure that we're listening to people, that we're bringing together different voices. And I understand that there's two sides to every story, right? And so it's really important to listen. I will say another thing that I've learned representing so many low wage workers around the country is that if you're a big employer, a big fancy corporation, and you're not paying your workers, you're not paying your taxes either. And as comptroller, I will absolutely make sure that the biggest companies out there, that everybody is paying their fair share in taxes. I mean, it's just essential. You and I are paying, and they need to pay too. But and then I've also done a fair amount of work representing blind-owned businesses in procurement around the country. And one of the things that's interesting is that so many people are that these small businesses we've seen, they apply for government contracts, and oftentimes they're underbid by major corporations or huge, multinational companies. And then those big companies come in and they file change order after change order after change order over the next few years, so that it actually ends up costing taxpayers more to go with those big companies than it would have if they'd gone with the small local, MBE or disadvantaged business. And so I feel really strongly that we need to make sure that we're keeping our money local and that we're working to support our minority business enterprises and our small businesses that are owned by our Black-owned businesses, women-owned, veteran-owned businesses in the state of Maryland, because then our money will go so much further, right? It will be building up wealth here in the state, as well as getting us great value.
Yes, yes, thanks. And you did answer all of my questions. I know I threw a lot at you in that, in that moment, but I'm glad that you answered all the questions. So what exactly, in a nutshell, does the Maryland Comptroller do? Because, I mean, I know a little bit about the Comptroller in terms of what I do, what they do, but I'm not sure, like, in terms of the full aspect of what they do. I know they manage the funds for the state, but what does that look like on a day-to-day basis? I mean, like, how does the comptroller approach the finances for the state of Maryland? Because again, Maryland has 24 jurisdictions, so that's a lot of funds to cover. So what does that look like on a day-to-day basis? What would you be doing?
It looks like building a great team, right? I mean, I think one of the first things that any manager, any director has to do is to build a great team. So it's really essential that we bring together, we create an office that's as diverse as the state of Maryland, that's ready to work for the people of Maryland, that's bringing in creative and new and bold ideas for how to make sure that the systems that we have are modern, transparent, and accountable, right? So I'm excited to create new systems in the comptroller's office to really modernize the office, make it easier to pay taxes, make it easier to more transparent to follow where our dollars are being spent, and so that we can be held accountable and that we can hold our vendors accountable as well. So I think, I have a lot on my priorities on my website, but I think absolutely one of them is building a great team that can serve the people of Maryland, including things like having an equity officer in the comptroller's office to help understand how we're spending our money and bringing an equity lens to it, thinking through climate resilience and ensuring that all of our dollars are being spent in a way that's furthering our climate resilience goals so we can prepare for climate change and more.
Yes, absolutely. And yes, and I did take a look at your website, and I was able to see everything that you outlined on your list of priorities. And, I definitely, now I got a better understanding of what the comptroller does in terms of, what the job looks like on a day-to-day basis, being in the comptroller's office and having that team like you just discussed. So my question now is, what advice would you give to a lot of young people and students who are pursuing careers in law? Because I know a lot of students, a lot of my peers, they're pursuing careers in law and in public policy and in some form of American government. So what advice would you give to young people or students who are pursuing this path and who want to become public servants or who want to become attorneys? I've had attorneys on my show. I've had some of your colleagues on my broadcast to talk about that. But what advice would you give? Because I know that everyone's insight is different. I know everyone's experiences are different. So what would you say to that?
So, I think, first of all, you don't have to be an attorney to run for office. And I don't think you should, I often counsel people not to go to law school unless they want to be an attorney, right? It's a lot of money, it's 3 years. I think I loved the training I received in law school, but I also love being a lawyer, right? And so I think but I loved law school and I got a lot of it. I also took off a number of years in between college and law school so I could go do other work and try other things to make sure I really wanted to be a lawyer and I wanted to make that investment in law school. So one of the first things I would say is, consider taking some time off between college and law school and going and exploring the world, what you want to do, work at a nonprofit, work on a campaign, intern at a law firm if you want, or become a paralegal. But I think it's worth it to try some other things before before sort of jumping in with both feet. Just make sure it's what you want to do because it's a big investment. I absolutely loved being in law school, and I love being a lawyer. But I also, you think through where you want to practice law, the type of law you might be interested in while you're in law school, right? If you're absolutely sure you want to be a tax lawyer, then you better take tax law, right? If you're sure that you want to do domestic, then make sure you take family law. So I think it's, think through what kind of lawyer you want to be. If you don't know what kind of lawyer you want to be, that's okay. Just learning to think like a lawyer and write and become an excellent writer is, it's sort of what law school is all about, to understand our laws and how to apply them and how to, think through what legal ramifications of different scenarios are. Then there's running for office, right? And running for office is different than becoming a lawyer. There are certainly, there are many lawyers who are in elected positions, but there are many elected officials who are certainly not lawyers. And that's important, right? We need people from all walks of life to be in elected office because they bring their different perspectives, their different lived experiences. And that's really essential to making sure that our electoral system, to making sure that our government is more representative, but also so that it is making laws that we know how they'll affect different people, right? That's why it's so important that we have a diverse government so that we can think about how the laws that we're crafting will affect different people and different walks of life. Running for office is a whole different beast. I'm always happy to talk to people about it. But getting involved in your community and getting to know people is really the first step, right? It's about making sure that you're there, you're present, you're trying. To me, being in a public office is about solving problems and about improving people's lives. And you can do that in a number of different ways. You can do it as a community organizer, a community advocate, working at nonprofits, working as an attorney. So, finding the way that you want to make your difference and leave your imprint on making the world a better place is important. And there are lots of different ways to do that.
Yes, absolutely, and I totally agree. And I've heard some of the similar advice from other attorneys that I've had on my broadcasts, and some of the other public some of the other elected officials who have appeared on my show have talked about that too. My next question is, outside of your campaign and the primary election. So could you tell us when the primary election, when the general election takes place? Because I think that again, a lot of people, especially a lot of young people, students, let's just say, they may not be familiar with what the primary election looks like and what the general election looks like, and some people may not be registered to vote right now, but they still have time to do that. So could you tell us a little bit about what the primary election looks like and what the general election will look like and how people can register?
Absolutely. So for all electoral information, you can go to elections.maryland.gov. That's elections.maryland.gov, our state board of elections. Early voting. So the primary election this year in Maryland is on July 19th. Early voting for the primary election is every day, Thursday, July 7th through Thursday, July 14th. And then the actual election day is July 19th. There's also mail-in ballots. So you can file a request online to receive a mail-in ballot. Those will start being sent out in early June. And so you can get the ballot, you can mail it back in, drop it in any mailbox, so that it gets to folks, and then you don't have to worry about it if you're going away on vacation. And again, you can go to elections.maryland.gov to request that ballot. The general election is on Tuesday, November 8th. And so first, of course, there's the primary election where Democrats and Republicans pick their nominees. And then we'll have the general election in November this year.
Yes, thanks again for sharing that. I know it's important for people to note that because again, with the pandemic and with all of the obstacles that have been here for the past 2 years, it's important for people to know that because I do know that in 2020 it was a hassle trying to get everyone for that election season that we were in. So again, it's very important for people to know how to register and how to, again, be prepared for the primary and general elections. So I'm glad you were able to share that. And I hope people who are listening can note that. What are, outside of your campaign, what is on your agenda for the rest of the year? I mean, we're already pretty much in the middle of the year. We're halfway through 2022. So what are your plans and what kind of projects are you working on outside of your campaign for the remainder of the year? Because I know that, again, the beginning of the year for you was, of course, being in the legislative session.
Yeah, I mean, we had our legislative session from January to April, 90 days, really proud of the work that we did, passing paid family leave, supporting small businesses. I passed the largest new investment in financial aid for our students in higher ed in a generation. So much more money going to student financial aid, which is exciting, starting next year. There's more to do, of course, always. Right now, I'm concentrating on the campaign. And then after the primary election, we'll see what's next. But really excited, 56 days to go until July 19th. And of course, mail-in ballots come out even sooner than that. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do this today. Thank you. Thank you, Nelson.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So one last question that I have is it's about you working as an attorney. So could you tell us a little bit about your firm and what kind of what you practice? Because again, I know that you talked about the fact that there are many different types of law that students can really study in law school. I've spoken with attorneys about how important it is to have study groups and working with many people who are, again, passionate about the same area of law and who are passionate about studying specific areas of law to practice. So could you tell us a little bit about your firm, the firm that you practice, or the type of law that you practice? I know you spoke a little bit about that earlier on in the show, but could you tell us a little bit about your firm and what you represent and the types of clients you accept?
Sorry, there we go. Yeah. So like I said, I work at a firm. It's called Brown Goldstein and Levy in Baltimore, and I represent low-wage workers in Fair Labor Standards Act cases or who aren't being paid what they're owed. I represent people with disabilities from everything from procurement issues to discrimination cases, not being given proper accommodations. And then I've done housing discrimination cases for the Baltimore Neighborhoods Incorporated before it closed. I've represented wrongfully convicted individuals. So, I've done different types of work like that. I love being a lawyer. I love being a legislator. It's really an honor to serve in whatever capacity I can. And to help lift up other people's voices, to make sure that people are being heard. I truly believe that, and I think, or a former person I worked for, Senator Paul Wellstone, always used to say, we all do better when we all do better. I firmly believe that. And so, just love doing what I can each and every day, working with people, and excited to be on the campaign trail, 24 county campaign, get into every corner of the state. I've loved meeting people, talking with them about the importance of the Comptroller's office. And I sincerely hope I can earn your support in the election this summer. As you can find out more about me at brookelierman.com. So thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Do you have any last words for the listeners, in terms of like what you do and what you're trying to accomplish as a state comptroller, and any, again, advice for young people who want to pursue what you're pursuing now. Any last words?
I encourage people to get involved, right? Elections really matter. Elections have consequences. They decide whether we pass stronger gun safety laws and do more gun violence prevention. They decide whether we're funding our public schools. They decide whether we're expanding transit, right? And providing opportunities. They decide whether we're able to support small businesses. And there's so many big challenges facing the country and our state right now. We can't afford to have people sitting on the sidelines. We need you to get involved. So I hope you'll get involved. Feel free to check out my website. Go to elections.maryland.gov to learn more about voting, and get involved in your community. We need people to step up. It's been an incredibly challenging couple years for so many people. Now is the time for us to really start stitching things back together and building back in a better and more equitable way. So thank you for all you do, and I appreciate your time. Thanks.
Yes, you're welcome. Take care. Okay, so with the little time that we have left for the broadcast, I want to encourage you all to, again, sign up and register to vote. You heard her. The primary is like 56 days away. So I encourage you all to, again, do your research. It's very important for all of us during the election season, and even outside of the election season, to, like Ms. Lierman stated, get involved. It's important for everyone to get involved because, again, all of our votes matter. Our elections matter. And like Ms. Lierman had stated, every election has a consequence. So I encourage you all to, again, get involved and stay active in your community because, again, we are all in a position to make a difference. We are all in a position to make a change. And like Ms. Lierman said, elections.maryland.gov, I'm looking at the website right now, and the gubernatorial elections are taking place again this year. You can register to vote. The deadlines are June 28th, 2022 for the gubernatorial primary election and October 18th, 2022 for the gubernatorial general election. So if you want to register to vote, those are the two deadlines you have to look out for. June 28th, 2022 for the gubernatorial primary election and October 18th, 2022 for the gubernatorial general election. And in order to request a mail-in ballot, they must be received by July 12th, 2022 for the gubernatorial primary election and by November 1st, 2022 for the gubernatorial general election. So again, that's when you want to request a mail-in ballot. It must be received by July 12th, 2022 for the gubernatorial primary election and November 1st, 2022 for the general election. And again, you can also vote on election day. So the gubernatorial primary election day is July 19th, 2022. And Ms. Lierman has stated that before she hopped off the broadcast. And the general election day is November 8th, 2022. Again, July 19th, 2022 is primary election day. So again, I encourage you all to keep these dates in mind. And November 8th, 2022 is general election day. So again, elections.maryland.gov can give you guys more information about who the candidates are, who's running for election, who is going to, again, how I should say, how you can request the mail-in ballots and how you can register to vote. I mean, it's very, very important. I encourage you all to, again, don't allow the pandemic to stop you. Don't allow the pandemic to hold you back. Again, I encourage you all to attend forums like this where we talk about some of the issues that are taking place in the community. I encourage you all to, again, do your research and figure out who your elected officials are and reach out to their offices whenever you need something. We have the power as constituents to make the difference. All of the elected officials are working on our behalf in order to make the necessary difference that needs to be made within each and every one of our communities. And I think that it's important to note that, again, Ms. Lierman first got involved in politics when she started working on the 2002 campaign of U.S. Senator Paul Wellstone and on the presidential campaign of Howard Dean and John Kerry. But again, prior to going to law school, and these are some of the things that she didn't mention and didn't have time to mention because of scheduling conflicts. But it's important to note that, again, before she went to law school, She worked for the Center for American Progress in DC, and she also, again, clerked for Judge Benson Legg, and Judge Deborah Chasnow. Both of them are Chief Justices for the Federal District Court of Maryland in 2009 and 2010. She's been a member of the House of Delegates since January 14th, 2015, and she also, again, has sat on several committees. Um, she's a member of the Study Group on Economic Stability, the Joint Committee on Pensions, like I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, the Environment and Transportation Committee, the Joint Committee on the Chesapeake and Atlantic Coastal Bays Critical Area, and she's also a member of the Women Legislators of Maryland, the Maryland Legislative Latino Caucus, and the co-chair of the Maryland Legislative Transit Caucus. And I think that these are some of the things that she mentioned before. But again, these are just examples of what it looks like when you're really involved in your community, and when you are really passionate about making the necessary difference that you need to make in your community. So I encourage you all to, again, hop on over to Brooke Lierman.com. So that's BROOKELIERMAN.com. Again, that's BROOKELIERMAN.com, so that you guys can learn more about her campaign for comptroller and what's on her policy agenda, and so that you guys can learn a little bit more about what the Office of the Comptroller does. And again, in a nutshell, I'm going to share a little bit about that with you guys before we end the show, and I'm going to wrap up with a few last minute thoughts. So again, just like Ms. Lierman has stated, the Office of the Comptroller manages the state's funds. So the Comptroller's office. So when you guys are looking for your state comptroller, you guys have to really think about who is responsible enough and qualified to manage the state's funds. So again, the Comptroller's office is very important, and the Comptroller is the elected chief accountant for Maryland, and the Comptroller oversees tax collection. It keeps the state's books, disperses payments and refunds to counties and municipalities, and signs the state's checks, pays contractors doing business for the state, and pays state employees, and oversees some industry regulations. So she spoke a little bit about that this evening. But as one of only 3 statewide independently elected officials, alongside the governor and the attorney general, the comptroller is a key leader in Maryland who works with state agencies, the General Assembly, and industries to make Maryland's economy work for everyone. And as a steward of the state's finances, the comptroller serves as a leader on several influential government bodies. And again, these are the jobs, the roles and responsibilities of the state comptroller. So these are some of the things I encourage you all to keep in mind when you go vote, and when you pick your candidate, when you vote for the elected official, and when you do your research and really dig deep and figure out what you want from your comptroller. Because again, your comptroller is working for you, just as the other elected officials in their seats are. So again, the comptroller serves as a leader on several influential government bodies. So that includes the Board of Revenue Estimates, the Board of Trustees of the State Retirement and Pension System, and the Board of Public Works, which oversees the state's capital projects and procurement contracts. And again, Ms. Lierman spoke about that a little bit. And they're supported by 1,100 staff and 12 field offices across Maryland. And the comptroller has considerable influence in ensuring that Maryland's tax dollars are collected and spent transparently, fairly, efficiently, and responsibly. So again, I think that Ms. Lierman has definitely demonstrated how much of an independent leader she is for Maryland. And I think that, again, she has the influence, she has the resources to work for all of you guys and for all of the communities that you all reside in. So these are some of the things to keep in mind. But I have one final thought for this evening before I wrap up the show and before I make some announcements. So next week is Memorial Day. So this coming weekend is Memorial Day weekend. So I encourage you all to, again, celebrate Memorial Day next week on Monday, May 30th. It's a federal holiday, of course, and I hope that you guys have a chance to honor and mourn the military officers who had died while serving in the United States Armed Forces. So again, that's the day to commemorate all of that. So I encourage you all to again take time out to commemorate the the people who served, the men and women who served in the military during that time, during their time, and during their tenure. I encourage you all to remember them and to celebrate their sacrifice next week on Monday. But next week on Tuesday, May 31st, I'm going to be attending an ice cream social. And I'm also going to be um, voicing my support for Miss Salima Jasani for Baltimore City School Board and Miss Ashley Esposito, the two new candidates for the Baltimore City School Board. I'm going to be supporting them in their campaigns. So next week on Tuesday, May 31st, there is an ice cream social from 4 to 6 p.m. at Mount Royal Elementary and Middle School on 121 McMecken Street, Baltimore, Maryland, 21217. So again, there's an ice cream social that's taking place on Tuesday, May 31st from 4 to 6 p.m. at Mount Royal Elementary and Middle School on at 121 McMecken Street, Baltimore, Maryland, 21217. And again, Miss Salima Jasani and Miss Ashley Esposito are running for two new seats for the Maryland School Board, for the Baltimore City School Board. These are two new seats, and these are two new candidates for the school board. This is a historical election for the Baltimore City School Board, and I'm happy to voice my support for those two young ladies. I met them last week at Delegate Smith's event, and I was really impressed. They both have a lot to offer, and they will be appearing on my show next month to speak about their campaigns before the primary takes place. So again, I encourage you all to keep that in mind. So I won't be attending, I won't have a show next week on the 31st of May. I'll be attending the ice cream social with the two young ladies and also at the school, at the elementary and middle school in Baltimore City where it's going to take place. So I will show a rerun, but I will be back on June 7th. So my plan is to return on June 7th. I need a little bit of a break during that time. So I encourage you all to, again, keep these forums in mind. So when we talk about these issues, I encourage you all to, again, invite your family members and friends to listen in on these discussions because they are important. And again, my last thought is, well, the last thing I want to say, the last few things I want to say is that, again, don't take elections for granted. I think it's important to network with people in your community. I mean, you never know who's watching, you never know who's listening, you never know who's in the position to help you help them, or in a position where you all can work together and build on what you all have to offer. You know, it's not just about elevating ourselves, it's about elevating the people around us, especially during this time. I mean, we've all had to make adjustments throughout the course of the 2 years we've been through the pandemic. Again, we've had to adjust to some sense of normalcy. But again, it's all about uplifting each other. You know, this is not just about elevating ourselves during the season. We all have an important role to play. We all have gifts, we all have talents, and we all have knacks for making this community better. We just have to figure out what they are, and we just have to find people within the right network to connect with so that we can make that happen. So again, this is another edition of the Beauty in Us Radio right here on Awesome God Radio. Make sure that you follow all of us, my fellow radio personalities and I, on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and all of the social media platforms. We're also available on Facebook. I encourage you all to take a look at some of our previous shows and our past shows from earlier this year and last year so that you all can really listen to all of our uplifting conversations and all of our discussions that we have with all of our guests from different walks of life. And I encourage you all to, again, follow my work on social media at Nelson E. Brown on Twitter and Instagram, and on Facebook at Nelson Brown, and on Twitch and other social media platforms with the same username. So again, this is the Beauty in Us Radio right here on Awesome God Radio. I hope you guys found this discussion. I hope you guys got something out of this talk that we had with the candidate for Maryland Comptroller, Ms. Brooke Lierman, attorney and delegate for the state house. Again, I will be having more forums like this throughout the course of the summer so that we can all, again, sit down and talk about the issues that matter, and so that we can all voice our concerns and voice our thoughts on many of these topics. So, again, I love you guys and I appreciate you guys. I will be posting a past broadcast later this week or in the beginning of next week sometime so that you all can, again, take a look at a previous show, a past show that you may have missed, so that you all can still stay informed and feel enlightened by what you have to hear and listen to. So again, I will be at that ice cream social next week on Tuesday, and I will be preparing for my position with MedStar Health under their house call program throughout the course of the summer. And I start that next month. So I have a lot of amazing things that are going down. But again, I will be back with you guys in June. Take care, stay safe, and I hope you all, again, really, really take heed to everything we've said. So I love you all. I appreciate you all, and I will see you in 2 weeks.